on the second anniversary of her father's death. A 14-year-old girl named Nova Reyes put on his old leather cut and walked into first period.
Effective immediately.
By lunch,
I know.
Principal Gerald Hartwell
your
had
decision.
suspended her for 3 days under a gang clothing rule. By Friday, 400 motorcycles idled outside every classroom window of Route 70 Junior Senior High. Between one suspended freshman and 400 silent engines runs a debt 2 years old, stitched inside a dead man's collar. The Iron Wolves broke no law to pay it. Before we ride into it, tell us, what time are you listening, and what road are you riding out from tonight? Nova Reyes was 14, a freshman, and she still counted the anniversary in months. That morning made it 24 months. 2 years to the day since Marcus Reyes went into the hospital and did not come back out. Nova woke at 6 in the small house off Bellwood Road and lay still, listening to a kitchen that used to hold her father's voice. Her mother, Elena Reyes, was already up. Elena was 39, an ICU night nurse, home 40 minutes from a double shift, still in pale blue scrubs. Dark circles rode under both eyes. She stood at the counter making coffee she was too tired to drink, and she did not turn when Nova came down the stairs. She had learned not to watch her daughter on this day. It cost too much. By the door, on the hook where it had hung for 2 years, was the cut. Marcus Reyes had ridden with the Iron Wolves for 17 years, and the brown leather cut carried the wolf head patch on its back, worn soft at the shoulders. It was 3 sizes too big for Nova. It smelled of engine oil and cedar and the inside of a garage that had gone quiet. Elena had never once moved it. Nova stopped at the hook the way she stopped every morning. Most days she pressed her face into the sleeve for 4 seconds and then went to school in her uniform polo. That was the whole ritual. But 24 months is a number that presses on a kid. And this morning, 4 seconds was not enough. She took the cut off the hook. She put her arms into her father's sleeves. The cut swallowed her. She rolled the sleeves twice, the way she had watched him never have to. In the hallway mirror, a 14-year-old girl stood inside a grown man's leather, chin up, eyes bright and refusing to spill. She looked for 3 seconds, like she was being held. That was the entire reason. She only wanted to go to school held. The cut on the hook, backlit by a kitchen window. Wolf head patch on the back panel, leather worn pale at both shoulders, sleeves rolled twice. Elena saw her at the door and set the coffee down too hard. Nova. 1 word. The girl lifted her chin another half-inch. It still smells like the garage, Mom, Nova said. I need him closer than a photograph today, just today. Elena Reyes had held a house together on 2 years of double shifts and buried a husband at 37, and she knew the exact weight of that sentence. She did not have the heart to fight it. She should have. Keep it zipped over your polo, Elena said finally. And Nova, if anyone says 1 word, you call me. I don't care what shift I'm on. Nova nodded. She did not think anyone would say a word. It was a jacket. It was her father's jacket. She was 14, and she believed, the way 14-year-olds are allowed to believe, that a school would understand a girl missing her dad. She walked out into a cold October morning and up 4 blocks to Route 70 Junior Senior High, zipped into her father's leather against the wind. Route 70. Junior Senior High School sat off the highway corridor, 1,100 students under long fluorescent halls. Its principal was Gerald Hartwell. 52, checkered vest buttoned to the collar, reading glasses pushed high on his forehead. Cruelty had nothing to do with it. Gerald Hartwell was simply a frightened man. 8 months back, a district 30 miles over had made the county news when a student's jacket set off a hallway brawl, and the board had handed every principal a new rule and a warning. The rule was Dress Code Section 7, and Hartwell had it memorized. No clothing, insignia, or accessory associated with gang activity, including but not limited to motorcycle club colors. He had stood in front of 1,100 kids at the September assembly and promised he would not be the principal who let trouble back into his hallways. He believed that promise protected children. That was the trap. He believed it so hard he stopped being able to hear. Nova got as far as second period. A hall monitor named Doreen Pike saw the wolf head patch on the back of the leather and made one phone call to the front office. By 10:15 a.m., Nova Reyes was sitting in a beige office with no window, across a desk from Gerald Hartwell, with the cut zipped to her throat and her hands folded tight in her lap. Vice Principal Priya Anand stood in the doorway, a folder held to her chest, and said nothing yet. "Miss Reyes," Hartwell said, and he opened the handbook to the page he had flagged. "Do you know what this patch means to people?" Nova started to answer. "It was my dad's." "It's motorcycle club colors," Hartwell said, not unkindly, reading straight from Section 7. "Gang-affiliated insignia. I have 1,100 students, and a rule I don't get to bend for one of them." He turned the handbook so she could see the line. He thought showing her the rule was fairness. It was the opposite. "My dad rode with them," Nova said. Her voice stayed level. "He died 2 years ago today. The jacket is all I'm sorry about your father," Hartwell said. And the terrible part was that he meant it. "I am. But if I let this jacket in, I let the next one in, and the one after that, and then I'm the man who put colors back in a school." 3 days, Miss Reyes. It goes on your record as a dress code violation. You can pick up your work in the office. Priya Anand pressed the folder against her chest and opened her mouth. Anand was 45, navy blazer, dark hair and a tight bun, and she had read Section 7 the day it came down and thought it was wrong then. "Gerald," she said quietly, "maybe we hear the whole." "Priya." Hartwell did not raise his voice. "The rule doesn't have a whole story clause. If it does for her, it does for everyone, and then it protects no one." Anand closed her mouth. She was his second. She could not overrule him. Not yet. Nova Reyes did not cry in that office. That is the part the school never understood. She sat very straight in a jacket 3 sizes too big, and she looked Gerald Hartwell in the eye, and she said one thing before she stood up. "His road name is stitched inside the collar," she said. "You didn't even look." Then she zipped the cut to her chin and walked out past Priya Anand, who could not meet her eyes, and out the front doors of Route 70 High at 10:40 in the morning. Elena Reyes got the call at 10:52, 4 hours into the sleep she needed before her next shift. She did not yell at the school. She was too tired and too practiced at swallowing things. She signed Nova out, drove her home in silence, and only in the driveway did she put her forehead on the wheel for a 10 count. "It's a jacket," she said, to no one. "It's your father's jacket." Then she straightened her back the way she always did, and she went inside to make her daughter lunch. That night, Elena did what a tired widow does when the world has taken one more thing. She called the only number her husband had ever told her to call if she was ever truly stuck. It was written on a card in Marcus's old wallet, in his own handwriting, R. Calloway, day or night. She had never used it in 2 years. She dialed it at 9:40 p.m., expecting a stranger. A gravel voice answered on the second ring. "This is Ray." The Iron Wolves clubhouse was a converted garage off Delano Road, and by 10:30 that night, it was full. Reaper, Ray Calloway, 58, president, sat at the head of a long table with his dark glasses on, even under the shop lights, and a worn leather ledger open in front of him. He had listened to Nova Reyes on the phone for 6 minutes without saying a word. Now the room was 20 riders deep and getting louder, and one voice was louder than all of them. Tank. Osei stood up so fast his chair went over. Tank was 44, shaved head, a mountain of a man in a faded vest, and both his fists were closed white at his sides. Marcus's kid, he said. They suspended Marcus's kid for his cut. I'll be at that school in 20 minutes. He was already reaching for his keys. Half the room stood up with him. The other half looked at Ray. Sit down, Tank. Ray Calloway did not stand and did not raise his voice, and that was worse. Tank did not sit. Sit down, Ray said again, slower. You ride down there tonight. You're exactly the thing that principal's scared of. You hand him his whole story. Marcus's girl loses twice. Tank stood shaking over an upended chair for a long 5 seconds. Then he set it upright and sat, and his fists stayed closed. Then what? He said. We do nothing. No, Ray said. We do it the smart way. The loud way is the exact thing that principal is waiting for, and he is not getting it from us. Ray Calloway looked down the table and found the one rider not shouting. Reina Vasquez, 29, short dark hair, a cross-zip leather jacket over office clothes, a folder already open in front of her. Before the Iron Wolves, Reina had taught middle school civics for 4 years and then trained 2 more as a paralegal. Reina, Ray said, what does a school like that actually answer to? Reina did not look up from the folder. Paper, she said. Documents, deadlines, and a school board that meets the 3rd Tuesday of every month. Give me the jacket in 3 days. I'll build the record. That was when Doc reached for the cut. Doc Withers had not said a word all night. He was 66, white hair, steel-rimmed glasses, a wolf-head medical satchel on the bench beside him, and he had been Marcus Reyes's oldest friend in the club for 19 years. He was at the wreck 2 years ago. He carried a quiet guilt he had never set down, that he had not reached the car first. Now Elena had sent the cut with a neighbor, so Reina could photograph the patch for the record, and it lay across the table under the shop light. Doc picked it up the way you pick up a sleeping child. Reina needs the patch on the back, someone said. Doc did not turn it to the back. His hands, steady for 40 years of field medicine, were not steady now. He turned the collar out instead, toward the one bright shop lamp overhead, and he held it there in the light. The room went quiet by rows, front to back, the way a room does when an old man's hands start to shake for a reason nobody has been told. The inner collar under a single hanging shop lamp. 2 lines of uneven hand stitching in dark thread, a larger word above, a smaller line beneath, catching the light. Inside the collar, in thread, in Marcus Reyes's own uneven hand, was stitched a single word, Ghost, his road name. And beneath it, smaller, closer to the seam, a second line the club had never seen, because a man sews a thing like this for one person only. It read, For Nova, when she's ready. Doc Withers read it out loud into the silence. Both lines, and his voice broke clean in half on the second one. Tank Osei stood up again. This time nobody stood with him. What moved him now was grief. He crossed to the table and looked down at his dead brother's handwriting, and the biggest man in the room, the man who 15 minutes ago wanted to drive to a school and break a rule, put one scarred hand flat over his own mouth and could not speak. His fists, closed all night, came open at last. The anger had drained clean out of him, and what was left underneath it stood 2 years back on a road in a fire. Ray Calloway took off his dark glasses for the first time all night. He looked at Tank, not at the jacket. He asked the one question that turned the whole thing. "Tank," Reyes said quietly. "Tell her why this jacket owes your family. And tell them why it owes hers back." The room held its breath around a 66-year-old man, still holding a stitched collar to the light. And that is exactly where we have to stop the engine for one moment. Because if this girl and this jacket are getting under your skin, tell us in the comments where you're writing from. This next part is the debt, and it has a name. Tank Osei told the story to the jacket instead of to the room, the way a man confesses to a thing that can't answer. 2 years ago, he said, October, same week as now, my boy Micah was 6. His voice came out flat and careful, a big man walking across a thin ice. Elena was driving him back from a checkup. My shift ran late. It should have been me in that car. He stopped. Nobody filled the silence. They had all waited 2 years to hear this and never knew it. A truck ran the light at the Route 70 junction, Tank said. Rolled Elena's car into the ditch and it went over, upside down, fuel line cracked. His jaw worked. Elena got out. She couldn't get the back door. Micah was 6 and belted in upside down, and the engine was already burning. He looked up, and the whole room saw the 2-year-old fire still in his eyes. Marcus was 3 cars back on his bike. He was off it before it stopped. He got the door open with his bare hands, Tank said. Pulled my boy out, handed Micah to Elena, and pushed them both back from the car. He drew a breath that shook. Then he went back. Nobody told him to. There was a fire extinguisher on his own saddlebag, and he went back into the smoke to knock the flames off the fuel line so it wouldn't reach the other 2 cars stopped behind. He was in that smoke for 90 seconds. He walked out on his own. He said he was fine. Doc Withers spoke from the bench, low. He wasn't fine. Doc had his glasses off now, too, cleaning them on his shirt because his hands needed something to do. Smoke does its damage slow. I checked him that night and he wouldn't go in. Stubborn. Doc's voice went rough. 8 days later, Marcus Reyes went into the ICU where Elena works, and on the 8th day, his lungs quit. The county wrote, complications. The club knows what to call it. He traded 90 seconds of smoke for a 6-year-old, and it cost him everything. And he never once said the word debt. Micah's 8 now, Tank said. He's got a bike helmet Marcus's size hanging in his room he won't let me move. And I never... His voice caught. I never told Elena what it cost. She was burying a husband. How do you walk up to a widow and say your kid is why? He put his hand back over his mouth. So the club just helped. Quiet. Every anniversary. She never knew it was us. She never knew it was for Micah. 2 years I carried that and never said it out loud until right now. Elena Reyes had known one half of it. She had known her husband ran into a wreck and pulled a child out and hurt his lungs doing it. She had held his hand through 8 days in her own hospital and heard the word complications until it stopped meaning anything. What she had never known, what nobody had told her, was the child's name, or that the child's father rode 3 seats down at every club fundraiser she was quietly handed money at, and that the anonymous envelopes on her porch each October were a debt with a face. All of it would be spoken out loud to her within the week. Ray Calloway closed his ledger and set both hands flat on it. All right, he said. And the room, which 30 minutes ago wanted to ride down a school and shout, went completely still and completely lethal in a way no engine ever sounds. Here's what we're not going to do, Ray said. We're not going to give that principal one photograph he can use. No colors on that campus, no noise, no threats, not a raised hand. He looked at Tank. Tank nodded once. Here's what we are going to do. Reina Vasquez stood up with her folder. The suspension's already illegal adjacent, she said crisp. Section 7 requires the item be associated with gang activity. The Iron Wolves are a registered non-profit riding club. We run a toy drive, a scholarship, and a coat drive. I can put 6 years of tax filings and 3 newspaper stories in front of that board. She flipped a page. I file a formal grievance tonight. I request the item be reviewed as a family memorial, not colors. And I put it on the 3rd Tuesday board agenda, which is 12 days out. That's the smart way, Reyes said. Paper first. Every step legal, every step documented, every step in daylight. He looked around the table at 20 writers who an hour ago wanted blood and now wanted a filing deadline. And on the last day, if the paper isn't enough, he paused. We let them see how many people this one girl matters to. Legally. On the public street. Not a wheel on school grass. He stood. Tank, you're the one who wanted to ride down there tonight. You're going to be the most careful man in this club now. That's the job. Tank Osei looked at the stitched collar in Doc's hands one more time at the line that said for Nova when she's ready. Yeah, he said, and his voice had changed all the way through. Yeah, careful, whatever the paper needs. The loudest man in the room had become the most disciplined one, and he did it in the space of one story. That was the club's real strength, and it was the opposite of what the town expected from Leather. The paper war started that same night. Reina Vasquez spent 2 unpaid evenings at the clubhouse table building a packet. The non-profit registration, 6 years of filings, the coat drive article, a letter from Micah Osei's own 2nd grade teacher, and a photograph of the collar with Ghost stitched inside it. She coached Elena on her rights by phone and told her one thing twice. You don't raise your voice. You raise your paperwork. Loud loses. Documented wins. Tier 1 began the same week, quiet, the way the club always did it. The Iron Wolves anonymously paid off Elena Reyes's overdue heating bill, $214 behind since September, and put a month of credit on Nova's school lunch account so the suspended girl would not come back to a red balance. Doc Withers drove Nova to pick up her homework each of the 3 suspension days, so Elena would not lose one more shift. He never talked much on those drives. He just handed her a coffee and let her ride quiet. On the 2nd suspension day, a local reporter named Gwen Marsh got wind of it. A widow's kid suspended for a dead father's jacket makes a story write itself. She called Priya Anand for comment. Anand, per protocol, gave none. But that night, off the record and off the clock, Vice Principal Anand did the first quiet brave thing of the episode. She looked up the appeal filing deadline, saw the district mail would reach Elena 2 days too late to make the 3rd Tuesday agenda, and she drove the form to the Reyes house herself and left it in the screen door. Gerald Hartwell got a 2nd meeting, at Elena's request, on the 4th day. Elena came with Reina Vasquez, who set the packet on his desk without a word. Hartwell read the first 3 pages, the non-profit registration, the coat drive, the teacher's letter. He was a careful man, and careful men do not enjoy the sensation of a rule going soft under them. He closed the folder. This is a well-made argument, he said, and he meant it. But Section 7 doesn't have an exception clause. I can't invent one from this chair. It's the board's rule. Take it to the board. That was the thing about Gerald Hartwell that made him harder to fight than a villain would have been. Every word he said was true. Section 7 genuinely had no exception clause, and he genuinely did not have the authority to write one alone. He was a scared man hiding inside a real rule, and a real rule is a wall you cannot shout down. Reina understood that better than anyone at the table. Then we'll see you at the board, Mr. Hartwell, she said, and she gathered the packet. 3rd Tuesday. We'll bring the whole record, She did not raise her voice once. On her way out, Reina passed Priya Anand in the hall, and the vice principal did the second quiet, brave thing. "The agenda's tight that night," Anand said, not stopping, not looking. "Public comment items get 3 minutes each, cut off at 9 p.m. If your item's near the bottom, it never gets heard." A pause. "I put family memorial exception second from the top this morning. Someone had to." Then she walked on, folder to her chest, before Reina could thank her. Anand had bent a rule she was sworn to keep, and she had done it in a hallway, quietly for a kid she barely knew. Nova Reyes spent her 3 suspension days at the kitchen table, mostly quiet. She did her homework. She wore the cut around the house, even doing algebra, sleeves rolled twice. On the 3rd night, Elena sat across from her with 2 cups of cocoa and finally told her daughter the part she had learned on the phone from Ray. That the jacket her father had left her had a name sewn in it for her, and that his club had been quietly watching over them both for 2 years for a reason bigger than either of them knew. Nova turned the collar out and read for Nova, when she's ready in her father's own thread. And she cried for the first time since the office. And this time, nobody was watching but her mother. "I don't understand why they do all this," Nova said. "For a jacket." Elena Reyes, 39, exhausted, holding her daughter's hand across a kitchen table, said the truest thing she knew. "Because your dad did something once," she said, "for a little boy on a road. And these people don't forget. They're not what that school thinks they are, baby. They never were." What the club would do to prove it was still 8 days away, a Friday morning the whole town, and Gerald Hartwell with it, would watch happen. Gwen Marsh's story ran on the county news site that Friday under a plain headline, "Widow's daughter suspended over late father's jacket." It had a photograph of the collar. "Ghost in a dead man's stitching." By Saturday, it had 40,000 shares. By Sunday, it had been read aloud on 2 morning radio shows and picked up by a station 60 miles up Route 70. The comments filled with one kind of person more than any other. Bikers, and the widows and kids of bikers, saying the same thing 400 different ways. "We know that jacket. We ride for that jacket." The Iron Wolves did not organize any of that. But Reina Vasquez watched the share count climb and understood exactly what it meant for a school board that answers to voters. "The institution moves," she told Ray on the phone, "when the record gets too big to file away. It's getting big." Ray Calloway sat with his ledger and did not smile. "Then we keep it clean," he said. "Every legal step. We don't need to threaten anybody. We just need to be too many to ignore, standing in the exact right spot, on the exact right morning." The exact right morning got decided on the club's CB network Tuesday night. Ray keyed Channel 19 at 9 p.m. and put out one message, plain. "This is Reaper, Iron Wolves, home chapter. We've got a debt 2 years old, a girl named Nova Reyes, and a school board that meets Thursday. Friday morning, 8 a.m., we're going to stand outside Route 70 high. Legal parking, permitted, not a wheel on their grass. Presence, not noise. Who's riding?" He set the mic down. He did not have to say the name Marcus Reyes. Half the network already knew it. The answer came back for 3 hours. The Delano chapter, 60 bikes. The Millbrook chapter, 2 states over, 90 riders, led by a road captain named Wade Cormier, who had known Marcus for 20 years. The Route 9 chapter, 70. A veterans riding group Marcus had run coat drives with, 80 more. By midnight, the tally in Ray's ledger read past 300 and still climbing. And Reina had already called the county for a street assembly permit and the sheriff's office for a traffic plan, because the Iron Wolves were going to do this so cleanly that not one camera could catch a foot out of line. Tank Osei made the call that pushed it over 400. He rode 2 hours to the Millbrook Diner off Route 9 where Wade Cormier's chapter drank their coffee, and he stood up in front of 90 riders and told them the whole story out loud for the first time. Micah, the fire, the 90 seconds, the 8 days. He was steady the whole way through. The loud man had become the careful one. When he finished, Wade Cormier stood up and put on his gloves. "That's not 90 bikes, Tank," Wade said. "That's every bike this chapter owns. Tell Ray we ride at 5. Sheriff's Deputy Hector Ruiz took Reina's permit application on Wednesday and read it twice. A 400 motorcycle assembly on a school morning would stop his heart on any other week. But Reina had done it right, permitted curbs, a traffic plan, no engines revving in the school zone, a hard cutoff at the property line. And Ruiz had a 12-year-old daughter at Route 70 High, and he had read the jacket story same as everyone. He stamped the permit. "Tell them," he said, "if one rider so much as idles on that lawn, I pull the whole thing. But if they hold the line," he signed it, "I'll block the through traffic for you myself." The school board met that Thursday night in the Route 70 High cafeteria under the same fluorescent lights Nova had been suspended beneath. The Iron Wolves came, and they came exactly as Ray had ordered. 40 riders in their cuts, seated in the back 3 rows, silent, hands folded, saying nothing. They did not shout. They did not stand. They filled the back of a public meeting with quiet leather and let the sight of themselves be the only argument they made until it was their legal turn to speak. Gerald Hartwell, at the front table, saw them come in. And for the first time, the careful man looked less than certain. Reina Vasquez spoke for her allotted 3 minutes and used every second. She laid the record on the board, the nonprofit filings, the coat drive, the teacher's letter, the 40,000 shares, and last, held up for 9 board members to see. The photograph of the collar. "This is not gang colors," she said. "This is a father's handwriting. It says, 'For Nova, when she's ready.'" Section 7 was written to stop violence. Applied to this jacket, it does the one thing it was built to prevent. It punishes a child for grieving. You don't need to break your rule. You need to give it a heart. A memorial exception. That's all we're asking. Then Doc Withers stood up, 66 years old, without notes, and told the board in 90 seconds what Marcus Reyes did at the Route 70 junction 2 years ago, and who was in the burning car, and how a man's lungs pay for a 6-year-old's whole life. He did not raise his voice once. When he finished, the cafeteria was so quiet you could hear the fluorescent lights hum. Gerald Hartwell sat at the front table with his reading glasses in his hand, and something in the careful man's certainty had cracked all the way down, and he did not try to hide it. But the board did not vote that night. They tabled it pending review. 12 days of paper, and still no yes. Nova Reyes was not at the board meeting. Elena had kept her home, wanting her daughter out of the fluorescent lights and the cameras. Nova slept through most of the week the town spent arguing over her father's jacket. She went to bed Thursday night, thinking Friday was just the day her suspension ended. The morning she would walk the 4 blocks back into Route 70 High by herself. While she slept, 4 chapters and a veterans group set their alarms for 5 a.m. A Millbrook road captain was already rousing his riders 2 states over. Tank Osei had stood in a diner full of strangers and held his voice steady through her father's name until 90 bikes answered. 400 machines were pointed at Route 70 High before she woke. The sound reached the school before the sight did. That is the part every student at Route 70 High would tell for years. That at 7:40 on a Friday morning, in first period, A low thunder came up the highway corridor from 3 directions at once. So many engines they stopped being separate engines and became one sound. A tide of it rolling in under the bell. Teachers stopped mid-sentence. Kids went to the windows. And 4 blocks away, walking to school in her father's cut, Nova Reyes heard it too and stopped on the sidewalk with her heart going fast. They came up every permitted street around Route 70 Junior Senior High and filled them curb to curb. It was more than any bystander could tally by eye. Later, the county put the count at 400 even. 400 motorcycles from 4 chapters and a veterans group. Chrome and leather in the cold October light, idling in tight formation along every legal curb the permit allowed. They lined the street outside every classroom window of the school, one unbroken wall of riders. And not one wheel touched school property. Deputy Ruiz sat his cruiser sideways at the corner and blocked the through traffic, exactly as he had promised. Inside, 1,100 students pressed to the windows. Every classroom looked out on the same impossible thing. A face turned up toward the glass for every child at the pane. Gerald Hartwell came out of his office at 7:52 and walked to the front doors and stopped. He was a careful man who had spent 8 months terrified of leather in his hallways. And now there were 400 riders outside his building, every one of them inside the law, every one of them silent. And that was the most powerful thing Gerald Hartwell had ever seen in his life. He stood in the doorway with no answer for it. At 8 a.m. exactly, at a signal Nova could not see, all 400 engines idled together for 2 full minutes. One long, deep, deliberate sound aimed at every window in the school. And then, at the 2-minute mark, at a second signal, all 400 engines cut to silence at once. The sudden quiet was louder than the thunder had been. 400 riders sat their machines in dead silence outside a school. And inside, 1,100 kids and 60 teachers and 1 principal stood at the windows and understood, without a word spoken, that this was not a threat. It was an honor guard. Nova Reyes reached the corner of the school at 8:03 and stopped. She stood in her father's cut, sleeves rolled twice, and looked at 400 silent motorcycles lined up outside the building that had told her the jacket she was wearing made her a threat. Tank Osei saw her first. The biggest man in the front rank got off his bike, and 44 years old and shaved-headed and built like a wall. He walked to the 14-year-old girl and got down on one knee on the public sidewalk, level with her eyes. "Nova Reyes," he said, and his careful voice barely held. "I'm Tank. Your dad saved my son. We've been trying to find a way to say thank you for 2 years." Ray Calloway walked up beside them with his leather ledger. He knelt too, this hard old president, on the cold sidewalk in front of a freshman. "Your father's in this book, ma'am," Ray said. "Page 1, line 1. The only debt this club never figured out how to pay, because the man who earned it wouldn't take a dime." And then he was gone. He looked up at the school, at 400 silent riders, at the principal frozen in the doorway. "So we came to pay it where the whole town could see. Not with noise. With this. You're not alone at this school anymore. Not for one day of it." Here is the thing the 400 did that made teachers weep at their own classroom windows. They did not rush the school. The 12 riders closest to the family, Tank, Doc, Raina, Wade Cormier, and 8 more, walked to the sidewalk edge and formed a single line facing the front doors, and the other 388 riders stayed formed up in silent rows behind them, rank on rank down every permitted street, and let the ones who owed the debt stand closest to the girl. Even 400 strong, on a public sidewalk in front of a whole school, the ritual knew its order. Nobody crossed the property line. Nobody had to. Gerald Hartwell walked out of the building. He crossed the front walk to the property line, his line, the school's line, the one boundary all 400 riders had honored. And he stood on the school side of it, and Nova stood on the public side of it in her father's leather. The careful man looked at the girl, and at the 400, and at the collar turned out at her throat where Ghost was stitched in thread. And something in him that had been rigid for 8 months finally gave all the way. He did it because the record in front of him had finally grown too large and too true to file away. "Miss Reyes," Hartwell said, and the handbook was gone from his voice. "I read the rule to you. I never read your jacket. You told me to look at the collar, and I didn't." He took a breath. "I was so afraid of being the man who let something dangerous into this school that I became the man who put a grieving child out of it. I called that protecting children. I had it exactly backwards." He looked at the collar, at the 2 lines of stitching. "The board tabled your exception Thursday. As of this morning, I'm reversing your suspension myself, on my own authority, and I'll spend every day until 3rd Tuesday making sure that rule grows the heart it's missing. The board did the rest within the week, because 400 silent riders and 40,000 shares and a principal who had reversed himself are a record no institution files away." On the following 3rd Tuesday, in the same cafeteria, the Route 70 school board voted 9-0 to add a family memorial and heritage item exception to dress code section 7. The first real policy change of the whole story. The thing that would protect the next grieving kid the club never even met. Nova's suspension was reversed and struck from her record entirely. Priya Anand, who had bent 2 rules in a hallway to make this night possible, was the one who moved to strike it. She did not mention her own part. She never did, but that was still a week off. On the Friday itself, after Hartwell crossed his own line, he did one more thing. He turned to the doors of Route 70 Junior Senior High, held them open with his own hand, and he walked Nova Reyes back into the building he had put her out of. Past 1,100 students lining the halls, past teachers standing in their doorways, the principal personally escorting the girl in her dead father's cut back to first period. Behind them, on the street, 400 riders stood bareheaded and silent and let her go in. Not one engine turned over until the doors closed behind her. What the Iron Wolves did next, they did not do in a handbook or hallway. They did it in their own book. That afternoon, in the clubhouse off Delano Road, the chapter voted, unanimous, no discussion needed, to make Nova Reyes the first honorary junior member in the club's history. Ray Calloway wrote her name into the leather ledger on a fresh page, and under it he wrote what she was owed, which was everything, forever. The debt turned all the way around. Doc Withers stitched her a small vest patch by his own hand, wolf head above 2 words, and the 2 words were, Ghost's Daughter. They gave it to her on the school's front steps the next Monday, with Elena there in her scrubs, off a shift she did not skip because Doc had covered the drive. Tank Osei knelt again and pinned the small patch to Nova's collar, right beside where Ghost was stitched inside it. So the father's road name and the daughter's ran together now. "You ride with us," Tank said. "Not the bike part, not till you're older. The family part. Starts today." And he brought a boy forward, 8 years old, holding a helmet 3 sizes too big for his own head. Micah Osei, the child Marcus Reyes walked into a fire for, meeting the daughter of the man who saved him for the first time. The 2 kids stood on the school steps, Nova 14 and Micah 8, the girl whose father died and the boy who lived because of it. And Micah held up the helmet he would not let his own dad move from his room. "It was your dad's size," Micah said, the way 8-year-olds say enormous things plainly. "My dad says he was the bravest man on Route 70. Nova Reyes, who had not been able to cry in a principal's office, got down on her knees on the school steps in her father's cut and hugged a 6-year-old turned 8. and the last piece of the debt closed the only way a debt like that ever closes. Not paid off, but carried forward by the living together. Nova Reyes learned the whole of it that Monday. The name of the child, the 90 seconds, the 2 years of quiet envelopes. All of it, finally spoken out loud by Tank on the school steps, with his hat in his hands and his son at his side. The widow who had swallowed 2 years of things looked at the boy her husband died for, and she neither fell apart nor raged. She put her tired nurse's hand on Micah Osei's head, the same hand that had held Marcus through 8 days in her own ICU. And she said, "Then he did exactly what I married him for." That was the whole of her verdict, and it was enough. Route 70 Junior-Senior High School did not go back to what it was. The board's memorial exception went into the district handbook that November, and 2 districts over, the same district whose brawl had scared Section 7 into being, quietly copied it the following spring. And the Iron Wolves and the school agreed to one more thing that turned a bad October into a standing tradition. Every year, on the anniversary, Route 70 High would host a Founders Day charity ride in Marcus Reyes's name, engines lined legal along the curb, proceeds to the school's own kids. The school that suspended a girl for a biker's jacket became a waypoint on the chapter's calendar. An open door where a closed one had been. Gerald Hartwell was there for the first Founders Day ride, checkered vest, reading glasses on his forehead, standing at the property line he had once used as a wall and now used as a welcome. He shook 400 gloved hands that morning. He had become, in the way careful men do when they finally let a rule grow a heart, the ride's most reliable volunteer. When a new teacher asked him why the principal spent his Saturday directing motorcycle parking, Hartwell said one thing. "I read a rule to a grieving kid once," he said, "and I forgot to read the kid. I don't forget anymore. This is me not forgetting." Nova Reyes wears the ghost's daughter patch on her father's cut now, beside the road name he stitched for her by hand. The jacket is still 3 sizes too big. She still rolls the sleeves twice, but she wears it into Route 70 High every anniversary now, openly, and no hall monitor makes a call, because the rule grew a heart with her name on the reason. Micah Osei calls her his sister. Tank Osei drives her to the Founders Day ride every year in the truck, and he is the most careful driver on Route 70, and the loudest man in the club has never once raised his voice near her. That is how a school off the Route 70 corridor learned that leather can be the gentlest thing on a cold street, and that 400 engines can be the quietest, most law-abiding argument a town ever hears. The Iron Wolves broke no rule to win it. They outlasted the school and they outdocumented it. And on one Friday morning, they simply stood, 400 strong and silent, until a scared man remembered he was supposed to protect children, and did. Ray Calloway keeps Nova Reyes's name on page 1 of the ledger now, the debt that runs the other way forever. And when a young writer asks him what it means, he says, "It means her father walked into a fire for a stranger's kid. We just make sure his daughter never walks into anything alone again." Nova is a freshman who still counts the anniversary in months. She is a 14-year-old girl who put on her dead father's jacket because it still smelled like his garage and got suspended for it, and found out that the men the whole town would have shuddered against had been keeping the light on for her family for 2 years without ever once being thanked. She wears his road name and her own patch on the same worn collar now, and when people ask her why 400 strangers rode through the cold for one girl's jacket, she says the truest thing anyone in this story ever said. "It wasn't for the jacket," she says. "It was for my dad. And my dad was the kind of man who went back. So they went back for me." Worded, so if you've ever had someone go back for you, into a fire, into a hard year, into a fight you couldn't win alone, Tell us in the comments where you're riding from and who it was that went back. Somewhere tonight, a kid is getting told that the one thing that makes them feel close to somebody they lost is against the rules. Somewhere, a scared man with a handbook is about to forget to read the kid. Be the one who reads the kid. Be the one who goes back. And if you ride, ride kind, and check on the family at the end of your own road, because you never know whose father is stitched inside a collar. We read every single one. Next time on Route 70 Stories, a diner owner off the same corridor counted her last $47 with 7 days before the bank took everything. And the same chapter that idled 400 engines outside a school heard about it on the same CB network, from the same dispatcher, at the same 2 in the morning. The lamp was already lit. The coffee was already on. Keep your porch light burning. You never know who's riding out of the cold toward it. This is a dramatized story. The Iron Wolves are a fictional club, and Route 70 Junior Senior High is an invented school. Names, characters, and events are created for storytelling, and any resemblance to real people, clubs, schools, or actual events is coincidental. Ride kind and read the kid.